How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes by Maria Konnikova is a deep and engaging exploration of how we can train our minds to be more attentive, rational, and deliberate, much like the legendary detective himself. Rather than presenting Holmes as a superhuman genius, Konnikova reveals him as a symbol of mental discipline and cultivated observation. Through this lens, she contrasts two mental systems, the fast, automatic, and intuitive system Watson, and the slower, more analytical system Holmes. The book becomes both a celebration of mindful thinking and a practical guide for developing it in everyday life. From the very first chapters, Konnikova draws a clear line between seeing and observing. Holmes's power doesn't come from supernatural intellect but from the ability to notice what others overlook and interpret it meaningfully. Most people move through life on autopilot, barely registering their surroundings. Holmes, by contrast, is fully present. He doesn't just look, he sees. Konnikova uses this to set the tone for the book's overarching mission, to teach readers how to engage more fully with their own perceptions and thoughts. The core strategy Holmes uses is what Konnikova calls mindfulness with a purpose. It involves slowing down and directing attention with intention. While the modern world values speed and efficiency, Holmes teaches us that careful thought takes time. He carves out mental space to reflect before jumping to conclusions. Konnikova explains how this habit helps guard against the cognitive biases and mental shortcuts, what psychologists call heuristics, that Watson, and most of us, fall prey to constantly. Konnikova grounds her analysis in current cognitive psychology and neuroscience, using research to show how the Holmesian approach is not only desirable but possible. The book explores how our brains process information, and how these processes can be nudged and reshaped through deliberate practice. Holmes's method is framed as a form of metacognition, thinking about thinking. He is aware of how he forms conclusions, and he examines his assumptions rather than accepting them at face value. One of the most powerful tools Konnikova discusses is the brain attic, a metaphor Holmes himself used to describe memory. He believed the mind is like an attic that should be carefully organized and selectively stocked. Rather than cramming in random facts, Holmes curated his knowledge based on usefulness and interconnectedness. Konnikova uses this metaphor to discuss memory management and the importance of structure in learning and retaining information. It's not about knowing everything, it's about knowing what matters and how to retrieve it. In later chapters, Konnikova delves into problem-solving and creativity, showing how Holmes's methods extend beyond mere logic. His deductions are often deeply imaginative, the result of creative leaps anchored in rational observation. Konnikova bridges the gap between logic and creativity, arguing that one doesn't preclude the other. In fact, structured thinking can free the mind to be more inventive, by removing the noise and narrowing focus. The book also tackles the issue of attention in the digital age. Konnikova explores how constant distraction, phones, social media, multitasking, erodes the very faculties Holmes depends on, concentration, memory, and reflection. She makes a strong case for reclaiming control of our mental environment. In essence, we must guard our mental energy with the same care Holmes guards his attic. This means saying no, creating boundaries, and learning to sit with silence. Konnikova's prose is elegant, often witty, and always thoughtful. She weaves together the worlds of fiction and science with remarkable finesse, never reducing Holmes to a caricature or overloading readers with jargon. Her background in psychology lends the book authority, but her love for the Holmes canon gives it warmth. It's clear that this is not just an intellectual exercise, it's a personal tribute to the power of intentional thinking. In the final sections, Konnikova returns to the idea of choice. While Watson may be our default, Holmes is always available to us, if we choose him. This is not a one-time decision but a recurring act of will, to pause, to reflect, to question. She leaves readers with a sense of agency. Thinking like Holmes is not about being smarter, it's about being more mindful. And in a chaotic, fast-paced world, that kind of thinking may be the most revolutionary act of all. Ultimately, How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes is both a philosophical meditation and a practical handbook. It's a call to slow down, pay attention, and engage more deeply with life. Through the figure of Holmes, Konnikova offers a blueprint for clear thought and deliberate living. And though we may never solve crimes on Baker Street, we can all become more thoughtful, curious, and conscious detectives in our own daily lives. The book also focuses on the importance of skepticism and the suspension of judgment. Holmes famously avoids theorizing without data, whereas Watson, and most of us, often leap to conclusions based on limited evidence. Konnikova emphasizes how this intellectual humility can prevent errors in reasoning. It's not about doubting everything but about cultivating the ability to delay judgment until enough information is gathered, a form of cognitive patience that's rare but vital. Konnikova brings in practical exercises to help readers begin thinking more like Holmes. She encourages observational routines, such as taking mental notes about one's surroundings or practicing descriptive recall. These exercises serve as cognitive weightlifting, gradually strengthening attention, memory, and inference. They're small acts with big potential impacts, designed to transform passive perception into active interpretation. Another recurring theme is emotional self-regulation. Holmes is cool-headed, not because he lacks emotion, but because he knows emotions can cloud judgment. Konnikova shows how emotional reactivity often drives flawed decisions. By cultivating a Holmesian emotional distance, not detachment, but perspective, we can better evaluate situations, whether in relationships, work, or crisis. The book doesn't position Holmes as perfect. Rather, he is an aspirational figure whose methods we can emulate in our own messy, imperfect lives. Konnikova reminds readers that Holmes trained himself to think the way he does. He wasn't born with it. His skill set is the result of disciplined effort and deliberate habit formation. This message reinforces the book's accessibility. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to think like him, you just need to practice like he did. Holmes's relationship with Watson serves as more than just narrative contrast, it's a psychological mirror. Watson represents the default human mind. Trusting, emotionally driven, quick to believe. Holmes, on the other hand, represents what we might become if we actively shape our mental habits. Konnikova uses this dynamic to encourage readers not to abandon their Watson nature, but to bring Holmes into partnership with it. Balance is the goal, not total transformation.